Hello and welcome to another episode of Country Fried, bringing you the best country music conversations. My name's Ryan Harmon, and it is my pleasure to be able to bring a fellow Arkie to the show, arguably the king of Nashville, Mr. Bobby Bones. Bobby, how you doing?
I'm good. Very arguably. Very, very arguably.
Are you going to argue against that?
I would if we had time for it, but I'm not going to argue, but I don't believe that.
Well, let's start off. I know we have a limited time here, but I really want to get into where you are and how you got there. So just kind of start off talking about your background growing up in Arkansas. What was your childhood like?
Well, I grew up in a small town called Mountain Pine, Arkansas. Population 772 people. There was a sawmill. The sawmill got shut down. But I grew up there. I had my mom, my grandmother raised me for a bit. And, you know, it wasn't the easiest life, but, you know, I was the first kid in my family to graduate high school. That was really important to me. First kid to graduate college, obviously. And went through, you know, a good amount of struggle early, but I think it made me really strong for what I'm doing today. And, you know, from Arkansas I went to Texas. From Texas I moved, and apparently I'm now the king of Nashville. So, you know, it was a pretty good run. And, you know, from doing the radio show, which is kind of how I started that, and doing stand-up and writing books and doing some music and, you know, just trying to pay the electric bill, you know, and being able to do that while doing creative things has been, you know, really amazing for me, and hopefully inspired others to do the same that come from a background like we came from.
Well, how did you decide that you wanted to get into not just the radio business, but I would argue that you're really kind of in media in general now? You know, you haven't limited yourself to just radio. You've really kind of let yourself be outside of the box a little bit. But how did you decide that that was the career path you wanted to take?
You know, for me, at 5 years old, they asked us what we wanted to be when we grew up, and my grandmother saved it. And I said I wanted to be a comedian, a radio host, and I wanted to be in a band. And so I've always known, and I always would think that the kids that didn't know what they wanted to be when they grew up, I was like, how do they not know what they want to be? Right. And now I realize most people, they never really know what they want to be. I think I was pretty blessed to at least have an idea of what I wanted to do, and from an early age, I'd kind of set my goals to get out of the situation that I grew up in. Like I said, it wasn't the best home situation. My mom was an addict, and she died in her 40s, and my dad left when I was 6 years old. So a lot of my raising had to be done either by myself, or I was adopted for a while by my grandmother. But it was, this is what I want to do, and the only way I know how to get out of this is to learn, read books. And so that was kind of the path out. So
it really seems like your story, more than anything, is perseverance.
Yeah, I think resilience is the key to me and most people that have any sort of success. I mean, a lot of people will look on, you know, Instagram or TV or Facebook or wherever they want to see and see successful people and go, wow, they just must have it easy. They must be super talented at what they do. I would argue that the most successful people actually aren't the most talented at all. They're the ones who can bounce back from a no, either the fastest and or the hardest. And so for me, I think that's been the key, because there's really nothing about what I do that's spectacular. I'm not the smartest, not the funniest, not the best singer. But what I will do is, you'll knock me down and I will get back up. And doing that a couple 100,000 times, feels like a couple million times, you know, I think has put me where I am now.
Well, and also the way that you interact with your audience. You know, they really feel like they know you, and they feel like they're invested in you and what you do.
I feel like they're my people. You know, I don't throw the word fan around at all. I feel like for me, I am the people, they are the people. I feel like we're going through this together. And so I don't really talk at people. I try to talk to people. I try to listen to people. I think, again, that's a key to my success too, is, you know, like they say in country music, you know, don't get above your raisin. And I think that for me, that's been a big part of it.
Well, and that, since you mentioned that, we were just talking before we started here about the Ken Burns documentary, and talking about don't get above your raisin. What kind of led you to the country world? Because it seems like you really, personally, and just from the fact that you're a fan, it seems like you fit perfectly into that world of country music. But in the radio business, you could have just a talk show. You could have a show on a rock station or a variety station. Why did you choose the country music field?
Well, I grew up on country music. If you grow up in a small town in Arkansas, and, you know, my grandmother raised me when I was a kid, and it was Ray Charles, modern sounds of country and western music. It was all Johnny Cash because he's from Arkansas, and you know, when you have somebody that comes from where you come from, it really gives you hope. So she loved him. It was Andy Griffith Gospel Records, and so that was really the first foray into any sort of music that I had at all. And so that's what I knew real young. And so from then the 90s hit, and it was 90s country, but it was also alternative. It was the 90s grunge scene. I kind of got into that. But I, like most people, I don't live within a genre specifically. Like, my roots are in country music, but you know, for a while I did hip hop and pop, and I did sports and alternative. But for me, when they said, hey, where do you really want to go? Where do you want to do, you know, your biggest work on radio? It was on the country music format, because again, I think it's where my people are. I think that's where people who, you know, enjoy authenticity. I'm not trying to be anything that I'm not. So for me, it was growing up in it and knowing kind of what I stood for and the values there.
So it seems to me like, just based on what you said there, that you're totally fine with the direction that country music goes in as far as changing and experimenting with different styles of country and trying to fit different elements in there. It sounds like you kind of welcome it as a melting pot.
Well, for me, I don't want to put walls on art of any kind, any genre of music, anything creatively. If you put walls up, all that does is kill where it could go, where it might go, and it may go in a wrong direction for a while. So you're never going to hear me say that something artistic is going in a wrong direction, because it will correct itself if it goes bad long enough. Right. So I'm not a guy that's like, this is wrong, because we've just seen that be incorrect so many times. You know, people used to protest Johnny Cash because that was rock and roll, that wasn't country music. Garth Brooks has told me in person that when he came to Nashville, people were like, you're not country. This has been common for every single generation. So for me to sit and go, well, finally, this is a generation that's wrong, that would be, you know, a bit ignorant of me. So, you know, I'm not the guy who judges where art goes. I'm the guy who comments on art and loves art, and I don't have to love all of it, but I feel like that's where my place is.
Well, I love the fact that you still incorporate 80s and 90s artists. I've seen so many great interviews you've done where you've had Joe DiMessina in the studio. You had Mike and Marty from Shenandoah in the studio. You're just about the only outlet out there on commercial radio that still welcomes them and allows them to have a platform like that.
I know what I love, you know, and if I love it, I think other sensibly like people also love it. You know, and I grew up listening to a lot of 90s music, so I basically just bring in people that I like. I mean, I wish there was some, you know, I'm just going to stand for a culture. But I'm pretty selfish when it comes to that kind of stuff. Like, I want to get the greatest stories I can get from the people that make me want to feel the most. And that's a lot of the artists that I grew up listening to. So I do bring on a lot of those 90s guys, but I bring on a lot of the super contemporary. I've brought hip-hop artists on my show before. You know, Pharrell has been on my show.
Right.
So for me, it's, you know, what makes me feel, that's kind of what I like to have around me.
Well, I think we're just about out of time, but kind of changing subjects here. This is all hypothetical.
Okay,
so
go ahead.
Say that I knew somebody who was auditioning for American Idol. Mm-hmm. Hypothetical. What advice would you give that person, again, hypothetical, if I knew someone who was auditioning for American Idol? What would they need to know before they go in there?
Well, I would think that before you walk in the room, I'm just going to, let's not even play. It's you we're talking about here.
Okay, it's me.
I think before you walk in that room, you know, you got to come to the realization that you deserve to be here. That whatever happens outside of that room, when you come out, that'll be. But before you walk in, you got to know that you have earned your spot to be here today. And that it's not bigger than you. And that if you go in and do the best to your ability, what you've been working on, your craft, for X many years, you go in and you do what you do, that it's going to come out good. It's going to come out good in the end. Maybe you get the golden ticket, maybe you don't. Maybe you learn something from the experience that takes you down a different path. I think you go in and you kind of have the realization that you're going to get nervous for a second, because you're going to see 3 really famous people that are massive in the music industry. But you're also going to realize after a few seconds that, you know, they got to wipe their butts too. So in the end, we're all just humans. You're here because you're good. I hope you go in, you take a deep breath, and you stay true to who you are, because there's nobody else here that's like you. And that's strong. That's so rare too. So I know you probably feel a little weird walking around in a cowboy shirt. I love the shirt. I love the pearl snaps. But I think that, you know, being different is a real advantage here. And I hope you feel that way. And that's all I want you to know as I'm sitting here with you right now. That what you feel may be the thing that may be your weakness is actually your biggest strength. That's why I would say hypothetically. I know we got a little specific in hypothetical, but hypothetically.
Well, and that coming from somebody who I think has followed their own advice. So
I try. So let me ask you a question here.
Okay.
How are you feeling for your audition today?
I'm feeling pretty good about it. I just kind of have looked at this whole process as being gravy. Anything that happens is kind of a blessing. The fact that I've made it to this point, I feel like in itself is a blessing, and regardless of where it goes from here, I'm just happy to be here.
What motivated you, though, to go out and actually audition for the show?
Well, a friend of mine talked me into it, and I had thought about it in the past and almost did it once, and for whatever reason it just didn't feel right, and I can't explain why. It just didn't feel right, and that may have been more of a timing thing than anything else. But now, especially since everything has kind of seemed like the cards have been falling in the right place, I've just been kind of going with my gut on this one and saying that it feels like maybe this is the right time. Maybe there's something I've got to offer here.
Well, we're here on your podcast. Is there anything that you want to know from me?
Well, it's more just kind of as a curiosity. I've noticed a lot of people here are going to be playing original music. I'm included in that. How have you noticed original music being received here?
That's a great question. So, if you can do an original song and do really well, you got a good shot. The problem is, people come in with original songs that are just okay.
Right.
And there's a reason you do a cover on this show, at least to start, because these are songs that already have an emotion attached to them. They're obviously amazing songs because they've been massive hits for people. So if you go in and just do an okay song, you're just going to get an okay result. So what I've seen is people that go in with really amazing originals get amazing results. It's just real hard to be amazing. So if you feel that your song hits that point where it's so good, I would encourage you to do an original. I would encourage anyone to do an original if they have that right song. But it's got to connect quick and it's got to connect hard.
All right.
How you feel about that answer?
I love that answer.
Is it an amazing? you love the song?
I do love the song.
Good.
I feel really good about it. It's one of those that's kind of been road tested. And anytime I write a song, to me, that's the way I test it out, is just take it on stage and see what people think of it. And if they react well to it, and they come up at the end of the show and they tell me that it meant something to them or it reminds them of a situation they've been through, then I know I've at least got the start of something. So, and this is one of those.
There is still time to change it to Mambo number 5. If you'd like to switch over to Lou Bega right now, you can switch.
Bump, 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 bump. Oh, wait a minute. No, we'll get a copyright strike
right
on that.
So tell me about this song. What's it called? What's it about?
The song's called and it's basically a basic country heartbreak song. It's about a couple that's kind of been close to breaking up for a long time, and they knew it was coming, but when it just actually hits, it's still kind of unexpected, and just going through the emotions of that moment when, even though you knew it was coming, that moment when it actually happens, how does it feel, and what are you going through?
So the test is, well, I feel it in my heart in like the first 30 seconds.
I think you will.
Yeah?
It's a tearjerker, Bobby. It's a tearjerker.
If you can jerk my tears, then you probably get a golden ticket.
Either because of how emotional the song is, or if it's so bad that you're just in pain. Either way.
Okay. So here's the question. Do you believe in yourself enough that you feel you can be the next American Idol?
I do. There was a time, maybe not even that long ago, where I maybe felt like I couldn't be. But I feel like I've got a pretty good shot, and I think a lot of that has to do with the universal appeal of country music. And the way that people relate to those songs, I think that there's a lot of demand for that, and I think I got something to offer that maybe can fill some of that demand.
There's a demand for people to feel things. Doesn't matter what kind of music it is. If you can make somebody feel something, there will always be a demand for that. And with this song you're doing today, if it's as good as you say it is, and it makes those judges feel something, then I think they give you that golden ticket. Got to make them feel, though.
That's the hard
goal?
part.
Yeah,
that's the
the
hard
goal?
part, but that's what we're going to try to do. Bobby, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Well, how's that for a surprise? If you were wondering where I went to Savannah, Georgia. Before the interview, Bobby was telling me how he used to watch Channel 2, our Little Rock channel, when he was a kid. He was even part of one of our quiz bowls back when he was in high school, so Bobby Bones is no stranger to Arkansas PBS. This interview happened just a few hours before I auditioned, so if you want to know what happened, you know the drill. Stay tuned. As of now, while I'm recording this, I don't know what you'll see or if you'll see it at all, but I hope you do see it. It was really cool. American Idol premieres this Sunday, February 16th on ABC. Check your local listings for exact times, but if you're in Arkansas, you can check it out at 7 p.m. thanks to our friends at KATV in Little Rock, 4029 in Fort Smith and Fayetteville, and KAIT in Jonesboro. I want to thank Bobby Bones for taking the time to let me interview him and then turn the tables and have him interview me a little bit. I also want to thank everyone at American Idol for being so accommodating, and that includes a big thank you to Luke Bryan, Katy Perry, and Lionel Richie for listening to this old hillbilly. Most importantly, I want to thank you for all the kind words and support and for coming back to listen to this special episode of Country Fried. I hope to see you again soon, but until then, this is your friendly neighborhood country singer-songwriter, Ryan Harmon, saying happy trails. Want to catch up on previous episodes of Country Fried? Head on over to myarkansaspbs.org/countryfried.